Hello and welcome to
Right.
another Stroke Warrior radio show with a friend of the radio, Anna Kerry. How are you today, Anna?
Hi, yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me again. It's nice to be back.
No, it's my pleasure. As people, some may know, you interviewed with me before about your stroke. Just
Mm.
remind us when your stroke was and what type. And
So 12th of March 2021, not a date that I'll ever forget.
yeah, right.
um, so yeah, nearly yeah, just over like 3.5 years now. Um, I think I'm quite far out and quite far out now and down the line, which is good. Had an ischemic stroke, so a blood clot on the right side of my brain, so affected the left side, which was due to a PFO that I didn't know I had, which has now all been fixed. So hopefully no more pesky strokes and clots going into the brain.
Yeah, good. What was affected again?
My left side was affected. So when it first happened, I couldn't move my left side. My speech was also affected. So my speech was very slurred, very hard to speak and get the words out. But I was lucky with my physical recovery. It happened relatively quickly. And I was just left with, after I left hospital, it was 4 days later. So it was in and out really, because it was COVID. So I think they wanted to get me out as soon as possible. But yeah, when I left hospital 4 days later, I could walk and I could move my left arm again. It was just, there was a bit of an imbalance, a bit of weakness there. But yeah, I've been relatively lucky with my physical recovery.
Well, today the reason we're talking is about the stroke well-being coach,
Yeah. Yes.
which is you.
It
Um,
is. It is.
ha-
It's me.
tell me what is a stroke life coach, if you will? In your case, it's a stroke, and we'll talk about the
Yeah.
definitions in a little bit.
Yeah.
What is basically a
So
life coach?
So a coach, and I suppose there's lots of different types of coaches around, and lots of different life coaches. Like people focus on different things. My specific focus on my training, what I was trained in, was actually a well-being coach. So when you think of well-being, it's kind of the reason why I was more drawn to that side of coaching was because I think of well-being and I think of like this state of being, you know, just this like contentment and just this happy state of being, this, which is really looking at the whole of someone rather than just looking at one little aspect. And I think that's what really drew me to well-being coaching, because of my other training in other modalities like yoga. So I'm a yoga teacher as well, that's
Oh,
trained in trauma-informed yoga and accessible yoga, to, so that I can help people in those ways as well. So there's lots of different types of coach, but the specific one that I look at is obviously well-being. And I suppose I think the reason why I call myself the stroke well-being coach is because that's really my area of focus, is on stroke recovery and
okay.
helping people to kind of move forward with their life after having a stroke. It's very much it can be very disorientating, it can be very lonely and isolating, it can very much throw you off kilter, and it I mean, for me, if I think about my own example, I came out of hospital and I felt confused. I felt that I'd lost all confidence in my body and in myself. And I didn't really know what to do, because there wasn't really anything out there to tell me how do you gain confidence back within yourself, and how do I start to build confidence in my body again? And for me, it was very much that I leaned into my yoga practice. And they're really the tools that I use within my coaching as well, to kind of give people, I suppose, tools for their toolbox, really, to kind of help them move forwards. So that was really kind of why I'm drawn towards it being stroke recovery because I know how it felt for me, and I know that there's been things that have helped me in my own recovery. So then I like to be able to help other people with that as well.
Great, great. What, and I guess my question jumps to what's the difference between a stroke well-being coach and a therapist?
Okay. So therapists, I would say therapists are always kind of, they start in the past and they go deeper into the past events and what's happened in your past. And they look at then how that affects where you are in the present moment now. Whereas with coaching, you're more looking at where you are now. So you're looking at the present moment and you're looking at how we're going to move forwards into the future and into that life that you may visualize and think about that you want for yourself. That's kind of the difference between the therapist and a coach, is that we start in different places. And with a coach, I'm not really digging into the past. The only thing I'm kind of going to dig into is your stroke,
Okay.
and what's happened. So it's kind of like, I'd start with like, where, what do you want to get out of these sessions? So it's like, okay, you've got this goal, this is what you want to get out of these sessions. So then it's like, okay, well, what's the reality? Where are you now? And this is really important with the work that I do, is that you work with the person where they are in that moment. And then, because that's how it all works, is you've got to meet them where they are.
Right, right. So you're identifying, first of all, goals, and then do you go through, well, what happens in a coaching session? I mean, your first session, what is that all
Yeah,
about?
so the first session's really kind of a discovery of kind of what the person wants to get out of these sessions, where they are in that moment, and just to kind of, and I suppose it's for us to kind of get to know each other as well, because like I always have like an initial, before we do the first call, I'll always have an initial call with people to kind of see if we're going to be able to work together and if that's going to work for both of us, because actually, you're spending quite a bit of time with me and it can get quite vulnerable and raw at times. So you want to make sure that you're going to be able to have that relationship with that person first and foremost. So I always make sure I have a call with people first to make sure it's the right thing for them and that they're also in the right frame of mind and they're also in that right headspace for coaching, because it can be hard, it can bring up difficult things for people, and it can really make you think and dig deep about things. Because what I'm trying to do is get them to realize that actually they've got all of the answers inside them as it is. They just need to look at things maybe a little bit differently. But really in that first session that we have, it's more just about understanding what their goals are, what they want from the sessions, and really looking at where they are in that moment. And then we can start to plan, and I can start to think about what different things might be able to help with my other modalities that I work with, and kind of bringing everything together for them. But it's so person-centered, and that it's really important that, like I say, we've got to meet the person where they are in that moment. So I think that's why I like it, because each thing is always different with people. And obviously people want to work on different things, have different goals. And especially with stroke recovery as well, it's so vast and varied. There's some people that have been really affected by the physical side of things, some people that's been really affected by the psychological side of things. So it's very much looking at where they are and what they want to get out of the sessions.
Do you go through some of the physical, mental obstacles that they may, do you address that at all?
Yeah, so it's kind of looking at, I suppose when you think of an obstacle, I think it's trying to get people to think about it differently. So there's, if someone says like, oh, I can't do this, or I can't do that. And it's getting them to think about reframing things, because it's like, you know, there's loads of things that I don't know how to do, but it's like if I say I can't do this, it's like, well, actually, I can't do it yet. And it's having that little change of perspective on it, that yet at the end of that sentence can flip it for someone and really make them think, oh, actually, okay, yes, I can't do it yet, but what about if I put these little steps in place? It's not about, you know, we don't necessarily need to know how we're going to get to that, like that big end goal that they've got, but can we put little steps in to kind of move us a little bit further forward? So it's kind of like you're lighting the way, as it were, to that goal.
Right, right. I like that, little steps.
Yeah.
It's, you know, one of my shows is Catch the Wave Warriors Achieving Victories Every Day. And it's those small victories that you
Yes.
have to start recognizing that we
Yes. Yeah. And I
don't
think
recognize.
that's especially important for the people that I work with stroke recovery, because like you say, it's very much overlooked, the little steps, the little wins, these little things that happen. And I think that, you know, I think I've got a thing on in my bathroom that says the little, when you look back, it's the little things that are the big things. You know, and I think that it is those small little things that you do every day
Yeah.
that can change your life.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God. I mean, just doing, I found it, and it took me years to find out that doing the things I used to do may have not looked pretty because of my stroke, but I got better and better and better at it.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
relearned physical skills. I relearned my computer skills.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think there's this thing where I think people think as well with stroke recovery is that you think everything has to be done in the same way as what it did before your stroke. And I think that there's this thing that, well, I can't do it the same as what I did since I've had my stroke, so I'm not going to do it. And so I'm not going to do it. And it's, nothing has to be perfect, you know, especially coming from like someone that's a self-confessed perfectionist at times. You know, nothing does have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's just about, you know, doing things. And once you start doing things, you get better. Like no one was born an Olympic medalist, you know, seeing as we're in the Olympics at the moment, you know.
Yeah.
It's about practice and, you know, trying things and trying and trying and trying. And that's like anything with stroke recovery, especially physical, isn't it? Like repetition, repetition, repetition. And that's what it is, you know.
Repetition and consistency are
Yeah.
so important. What are the benefits of having a coach?
I think for me, you know, because I have a coach myself as well. So yeah, you know, I think definitely since my stroke, I'm always learning stuff. So I love learning new things and, you know, always trying to grow and move forwards. And, you know, sometimes even as a coach myself, sometimes I get stuck with things. And I think the best thing about having a coach is like it's having someone in your corner with you know, like a little cheerleader that's going to be able to help you with some things and to help you move forwards with things that you're stuck with. And it's just like, it can be difficult at times, but there's going to be someone there that's going to, like, you know, going to come in with, you know, accountability for you. And, you know, that, which is really important for some things. It might get uncomfortable, but it's, you know, accountability is a really important thing. But it's really like having someone just in your corner. And I think that when people think about anything in life, really, not just stroke recovery, I think people don't want to ask for help and think that asking for help is a weakness, when actually it's a strength to ask for help, you know. And I think that having someone there alongside you on this journey that's hard and lonely at times, and, you know, having someone there that kind of understands and gets it is just a massive thing for people. You know, I think it's such a positive thing. So for me, you know, like I say, I have a coach myself, and I think like, I suppose I kind of think of myself as like a coach slash mentor. So, you know, really, because I've been there and, you know, I've been through like stroke recovery and I know the difficulties, I think when I work with people, they really kind of appreciate that,
Yes.
that there is that deeper understanding there. Yeah.
Yeah, it took me 6 months before I met another stroke survivor. So
Wow.
yeah, it's meeting other stroke survivors, and now with the coaching aspect
Mm.
attached to it, I mean, what a phenomenal idea. I mean,
Yeah, for me, I think peer support is a massive thing for stroke recovery. Like all of, like you see, there's lots of Facebook groups, there's lots of different places you can go, and it is amazing to get peer support from people that's, you know, that's been through something similar. And I suppose that's the kind of thing I'm offering, you know, just a one-to-one peer support really,
yeah,
with the coaching. But for me, I'll always be a massive advocate for peer support because I just think it's so important for stroke recovery. It's such, like I said, it can be lonely, it can be isolating, and to know that there's other people around that's going through similar is such weirdly, it's a nice feeling to have. Like, you would never wish a stroke on someone and you don't want people to go through it, but it is nice to have people that have gone through it and just get it.
yeah, yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
This is going to sound kind of weird, but
Mm.
you've got physical therapists, you've got occupational physiotherapists, you've got occupational therapists, speech therapists, recreational therapists, nutritionists, social workers, clinical psychologists, counseling, social work, life coaches. Why a life coach or why a coach?
Why a coach?
I mean, with you've got so many things going on.
Mm,
What's what's the benefit of the coaching in addition to those things?
yeah. So I think, so I know that you say, you know, that physio and all of those sort of things, all of those different therapists that we have, they're all great and they're all in their own right, they're all amazing. But what I'm trying to look at and what I do with the stuff with my work is, instead of just looking at one thing, I look at the whole. So all of those, so everything kind of comes together for me. So it's a holistic way that I work. And I think that's really down to my main, like the first bit of training that I did, which was as a yoga teacher. You know, that was always like my dream for quite a few years, that I wanted to be a yoga teacher. And I never envisaged it going in this direction because obviously I never thought I was going to have a stroke. And it was only 6 months or so after I'd qualified as a yoga teacher that I had my stroke. So I'd barely touched the water with what I was doing. But I think because of that modality and that yoga work, and that real holistic kind of thing with that, is that that's really formed the basis of what I wanted to do with my coaching. And I think that when people say to me, you know, I've had people say that they feel really nervous when they're going outside walking. And I'm like, okay, so how does that feel in your body? And you know, you have a physiological response in your body to nerves, to excitement, to all of these different feelings and emotions. But when you think about, if you're feeling nervous and it's like, okay, well, I'm feeling nervous, what happens to my body? My muscles can tense up, feel tight. And is that going to help with my walking? No, that's not going to help with my walking. So it's looking at how we can bring some calmness into that situation. And for me, like a lot of the work that I like to do as well is, you know, looking at your breath, the breathing, and how that can really change your state. You know, like I talk about this all the time. Like, my husband's absolutely amazing. When I had my stroke, he told me, when I literally in the midst of it and I was in a panic and I didn't know what was happening, he said, use your yoga breathing. And when he said that to me, I could start to think about, oh, okay, so if I can just deepen a little bit my breathing and really lengthen out on the exhalation, I know that that's going to start calm my body down, and it's going to make me kind of trick my nervous system into thinking, well, if she's breathing like that, then she can't be stressed or anxious, or, you know, it's trying to, I suppose, bypass what's going on, you know. And it's not going to take away the fact that I'm having a stroke, and it's not going to take away all of these things, but it can help you deal with them in a better way. And I think that's why I like doing the work that I do. And that's why I chose to go into this, because I want to bring the whole of it together. And actually, you know, I went to my specialist, you know, earlier this year, my stroke specialist, and was talking about the psychological side of recovery. And what he said to me kind of really shocked me, and was, you know, he was like, we've got all of these therapists. This is, you know, and this is just one example in the hospital that I'm in and at and under, was like, you know, we've got physiotherapists, we've got speech therapists, we've got OTs. And he was like, we actually don't have a clinical psychologist. And I was like, what now?
Yeah.
Like, what, like, and he was saying, he was like, you know, it's really interesting to see. He was like, actually, people that have had a good physical recovery, in his instances that he's seen, tend to have not a really bad psychological recovery, but they tend to feel the psychological effects more than what people who have a worse outcome in the physical side of things. Which I don't know if that's because, you know, maybe if you're thinking about the physical side of things and your physical recovery, that's kind of all that's on your mind, and that's what you're, you know, because that's what everyone presents out into the world, and how we navigate through is through the body. So I just found that really interesting, that, you know, there isn't, I think, and I think in this country there is probably a shortage of neuropsychologists in the UK,
Right.
because I see so many people struggling to get that psychological help. So even though there are people, it is difficult. And, you know, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a counsellor, I am just a, you know, a wellbeing coach that has trained that has done some training in trauma, and that can, you know, I've got tools in my toolbox to help me, that I can impart onto other people to help, you know, with their psychological recovery and those feelings of anxiousness that I'm going to have another stroke, or that feeling of like nerves that because I'm going to walk outside and I'm going to fall, you know. So it's just like, there is definitely like a lot of help out there, but I do think more is probably needed as well.
I agree. I mean, when we, in the beginning, I mean, you didn't hear or recognize somebody saying to you about the psychological part till what, 3 years? I mean, in the
Yeah,
beginning, they don't tell us you're going to face fear, you're going to face depression,
yeah,
you're going to face all of those things.
yeah,
So there's a two-edged sword, double-edged sword of dealing with
yeah,
the emotional and
yeah.
practical things.
I think it's very much when, you know, when I left hospital, it was very much like, here's a little booklet with some things in, that mainly talks about what older people need, as
Yeah.
well. And here's some exercises for you to do, because I could move around myself. So they were like, these are your physio exercises that you need to continue doing, which, you know, I did, and that's fine. But really, there was not anything in that booklet to tell me about the psychological side of it, and how I was going to feel, and the fact that I was going to feel completely and utterly lost, you know, and not knowing what to do or where to turn, you know.
Yeah, and there's the practical thing of dealing with the everyday life that they don't tell us about. You
Yeah,
know, that's what coaching can do. Uh,
yeah.
who should consider partnering with a coach?
I think you definitely need to think about where you are, as in, I suppose, in what headspace you're in, because I was like, I've even got it on my websites. Like, I'm not going to do this work for you. Like, you need to be prepared to do this work. And it is like with stroke recovery, you know, with your physical recovery, you get out what you put in, you know, and you need to be ready and prepared to dig a little bit deeper, and to, you know, be open, you know, to really be open to some new ideas, some new ways of looking at things. Because if you're not open to those sort of things, then coaching is really not going to work. You really need to have that open mind. You know, I've had people that's done some of my yoga stuff as well, and they're just like, oh my God, like I did not know that what anything to do with this sort of stuff. And but they were just really open, and the program worked so well for them because they were really open and receptive to what I was offering them and what we went through, you know. And that some people that I've spoken to, like they still use all of the tools and everything that we've gone through, you know, and because it's just about adding things to your toolkit so that it's not going to miraculously make everything better, but you know, it's not going to take away like that life's going to be hard sometimes. But it is going to help you to manage and deal with them in a better way.
Agreed, agreed. Well, you know, I've dealt with life coaches, not stroke in particular, but some of the questions they've asked me, for example, are what gets you up in the morning and drives you? When do you feel most productive? What negative thoughts do you have and during the day? Those kind of things. What kind of direction is the purpose of that?
So you'll probably notice about all of those questions is that they're all open questions. So as a coach, what we're hoping to do is to kind of tease the answers out of people, because what we believe as coaches is that you already have all the answers, you know everything, but you need help to find those answers and you need help to kind of shift your perspective. So they're all open questions that you would usually ask. And it's, you know, sometimes like people will say, like, this is a really like quite a common one is, well, I should, you know, some people will come to me and say, I should be better by now. And
Right.
I'm like, okay, where does that belief come from? You know, and it's asking them to kind of look and see, well, actually, where does that belief come from? And you know, and where's that come from? Is it true? And I think it's about getting people to question, because I think I've gone through this recently, and I think that people automatically assume that all of their thoughts are fact, and they're not. You know,
Oh,
like yeah, our
yeah.
brain tells us many things that aren't true. And so I think it's about, you know, getting people to realize that and actually think, oh, well, actually, when I kind of look into that a little bit, I can see that that's not actually true. Or, you know, why do I believe this? Well, actually, it's because I've seen someone else that had a stroke at the same time as me, and look at what they're doing. They're so much better than where I am. And so, you know, it's then you're thinking about, okay, well, you're looking at comparison there. And, you know, I always say comparison is the thief of joy, you know.
Amen.
So it's just,
Exactly.
it's the questions that you ask are all open questions to get people to think, and to kind of tease the answers out of them.
I've become a big believer in interviewing your therapists and people that you involved in your recovery.
Yes.
Um, you know, I've even talked to people that go out and visit their physio
Mm.
locations to make sure it's a proper location with the right
Yeah,
equipment, etc.
yeah.
What are the questions they should be asking when seeking a coach?
I suppose it's, you know, what qualifications have you got? Like, are you accredited with anyone? And kind of how is it that you work? You know, as a coach, like how if someone asks me how do I work, then you know that can really give someone an idea of what the sort of different things that we're going to be going through as well. So, and I do think it's really important that you do ask questions of people. And I think, you know, like when I did a series of interviews a while ago where I interviewed different people in to do with stroke recovery, and I interviewed a physiotherapist actually, and one of the things she said was that stroke survivors don't ask enough questions. And so I think it's really important that you do ask these questions and you do find out things and you do see, because, you know, especially if you're going to be spending some money as well, you want to know that you're going to get like what you're going to get for that money as well, you know.
Right.
I welcome anyone asking those sort of questions.
Yeah, this may be a crude saying, but I believe the only dumb question is the one you don't ask.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, if it
Definitely.
comes in your head, ask it.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Yeah.
it may make a huge difference in your recovery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you tell us what a patient or a client, I don't know what you call them, can expect for the results and the time it takes with you?
Mm. So it does, obviously it's going to vary. It's
Yeah,
these sort of things, because it depends who I'm working with, what I'm working on. But you know, I think what people can get out of working with me is that sense of becoming unstuck. I suppose because I suppose when people come to a coach, it's because something's not quite right in life. Like any sort of coach that you go to, you know, something's not right. You may feel stuck in something. And with stroke recovery, you may just feel stuck in your recovery, not really sure where to go or what to do. So it's having, when you leave the sessions, it's having that, I suppose, that sense of moving forwards and that sense of hope, that life can move forwards. It might not look how what we expected it to look, but I would like to think that people, that when they work with me, they come out with a new perspective on things, and how they can then, you know, the tools and everything that we work on in the sessions, they can then take those into everyday life and, you know, move forward through life with these tools for when anything other things come up. Because, you know, yes, stroke's hard and rubbish, but other things in life do happen that are hard and rubbish as well. So it's about arming people with these tools to be able to move forwards, and then, you know, hopefully be able to counteract anything else that kind of crops up in their life. So it's difficult to say like one thing or another, because it depends on what people, you know, what their goals are. But as a general whole, people will get that sense of being able to move forwards with their life after having a stroke, because that's really what I'm aiming for, is that there's life after stroke, and you
yeah,
know,
it
yeah,
can be helpful.
yes, yeah, definitely,
One of the things I dealt with early was my anger impatience. Do you, I mean, I know going into therapy sessions, I was like, this isn't happening fast enough. How do you tell your clients to get through that? I mean, some of them may go through the session and say, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's not working. Is there,
yeah.
I mean, should they be setting time limits or?
So when I usually work with people over a set period of time, and then, but we do, like, we would assess kind of where we are as we're moving along as well, to make sure that we're still getting to where they want to get to, and to make sure that everything's still relevant. Because it's, you know, it's like when you set goals, and it, you know, they say smart goals that you should set, and one of those is that it's relevant, you know. So it's making sure that what we're doing is still relevant for them. And, you know, so I always think that it's kind of a little bit like a one-to-one that you have with your line manager or something at work. Like nothing, like in your, you know, say you come up to your yearly review, nothing in your yearly review should come as a surprise to you, because you should be chatting about these sort of things in your one-to-one as you go throughout the year. And that's kind of how I think about coaching, is that we should be looking at everything as we're going along still as well, to, you know, so if we need to tweak anything, you know, what, so it is slow at times, and it is difficult at times for people. But I suppose what really helps me is those other tools that I have with my yoga practice. And, you know, I can bring in some of the philosophy from yoga, you know, to like the
Yeah,
different things that we do in that. So it's like the niyamas and yamas. I can bring some of those in and be like, well, let's look at there's this concept aparigraha that's like non-grasping, you know. So it's like looking at different things that I've got in my toolbox that I've used, and that I can help other people, you know, work through those sort of situations where they might be feeling frustrated or angry, you know, because so it is you know, some people do get really angry about these sort of things that's happened, and it's just, it's because it is hard, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole thing with expectations. It's a whole thing with
Yeah,
disappointment.
yeah,
But those, again, you got to recognize those small victories, right? I mean,
yeah,
those are steps to the bigger recovery picture.
yeah. And I think that's really important, is that when we are looking at, if we need to tweak anything or what we need to do for moving forwards, it's actually also making sure that we're looking at and celebrating the wins that have happened. Because it is like, you do think, oh, well, I'll just compare everything to how I was before my stroke. Whereas I'm thinking, let's just start comparing yourself to just after you had your stroke, and let's see where you are now. That's where we should be comparing if we're going to compare anything. So it's just about looking at those little wins as well. Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about Anna Kerry and the stroke well-being coach. What kind of credentials do you carry?
So like I said, so my original thing was being a yoga teacher. So I'm a 200-hour trained yoga teacher in Hatha yoga. So I did that so that was like I said, a dream for a while to become a yoga teacher. And then I started doing my training. Then the pandemic hit, which was
Yeah.
fun. And so we moved all of our training, because I went to a studio in the town near where I live, and then we moved everything online when the pandemic hit. So we continued the training, and I finished that in August 2020 was when I qualified. So that was my original training, what I wanted to do. And then obviously my stroke hit in 2021 in the March. So I took a bit of time out to kind of think about what I wanted to do. And I found a lady she just did this little mini training on trauma. And as soon as I watched that, I was just hooked. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah, yeah.
the way she's explaining this is amazing. And it really got me hooked. And she did another actual full training, so 50-hour training on to become a trauma-informed yoga teacher. So I took that on, and actually, so that helped me to actually process and deal with some of my own trauma from the stroke. It was actually really good for me personally. And then it also gave me the tools that I needed to help other people, which was great. So I did that. And then moving forwards a little bit, I decided that I wanted to create a yoga program. Um, and I realized this, one of the things I realized when I was being wheeled into the CT scanner at hospital, was that one thing I was thinking was that, what am I going to do with my yoga? Because I always thought that, I offered lots of variation, lots of different props to use within my classes. So I thought, I'm really accessible as a yoga teacher. And all of a sudden, I can't use one side of my body. And I'm like,
Oh,
if I had someone like this in my class, what on earth would I do? And so maybe I'm not as accessible as I thought I was. So that's just some random thoughts that go through my head as I'm going into a CT scanner.
wow. That's pretty amazing insight. I
But I
mean,
was just thinking that, oh, I wasn't really as accessible as I thought I was. So then that got me thinking about doing a yoga program for people. But what I actually needed was to be able to adapt the yoga postures to different needs. So I took on some more training and did a 25-hour accessible yoga training. Which again was great, helped me to really break down the postures that you think about in yoga, and that allowed me to kind of look at doing things more on a chair and doing other things as well. So that was really great. And then the most recent training that I did was my 50-hour wellbeing coach training, which that kind of brought everything together, because
right.
I got to a point where I was like, I don't just want to offer yoga to people, and especially because there's those whole misconceptions of yoga and what, I always say I'm not going to get people standing on their head, because I, unless you really want to, like, I mean, I can,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's
Well, and
just,
every stroke recovery is different. I mean,
yes,
like you said, comparison, the thief of joy. So people again, have to recognize those small.
Yeah.
But I'm question, I guess. What's your biggest success in coaching?
What's my biggest success? Oh, you know what I just really, what one thing I just really love, and one thing that just really just makes my heart sing is when someone contacts me out of the blue to say, I'm still doing all the things that you taught me. And I've created a little routine for myself. And, you know, it makes it all worthwhile. You know,
Yeah.
it really makes me happy to think that in some small way, I've had a little bit of an influence in someone's life, and it's made it better for them. So yeah, it's those little small things, those those little messages that you get from people that really just make it all just amazing for me, and that's why it's even when stuff like that comes through, it's just like, yes, this is why I do what I do, because it's hearing stuff like that, and that it's a couple of years down the line and it's still helping people getting through life, and creating these little routines and these little habits that people have is just really, really nice.
Yeah. I've and one of the greatest things I've found about survivors is they are so willing to share what they've learned. It's an incredible community.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
It's a community like no other. It really is, because there's so much knowledge from people that, and like you say, they're just so willing to share what they know and what they've learned and what's helped them. And yeah, it's such, it's always one of those things that no one ever really wants to be in this community, but
Yeah.
you couldn't ask for a nicer community to be in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess you probably learn a whole lot more that you can use in futures with future clients from the stroke survivors you do talk to,
Yeah,
because they are so
exactly.
open.
Yeah,
So
and it is that I'm, like I said earlier, like I'm always blooming learning. I'm always learning new things, and new, looking at new ways of doing things. I'm looking at doing some more training later in this year as well. So yeah, there's so much that I'm always learning, and especially from the people that are in this community that are just have a wealth of knowledge.
yeah, exactly. Anything you want to add about coaching?
Oh, I feel like we've had a
Any
really,
other?
really,
Yeah,
really
I
good
think you've answered
conversation
most
about it,
things.
actually. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you're in the United Kingdom, so
Indeed.
how do people get a hold of you, and can people in the United States also get a hold of you?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So all of my stuff that I do is all online, because I don't want to have like barriers to kind of being able to help people. So a lot of students that I've had, they've come from America, I've had some from Canada. So yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. But you can find me so my website is www.thestrokewellbeingcoach.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook under the Stroke Wellbeing Coach. So you can come and find me on there. So my website, I have a free resources section. So I've got lots of free resources on there, just like videos that I've recorded. I have a wellbeing booklet, that people, if they want to sign up to my mailing list. So I usually write out to my mailing list. I'm having a bit of a break at the moment, but usually it's once a week where I write like quite a lengthy newsletter is what I've been doing for
Oh,
the
I love
past.
those. I adore those. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something new that I started earlier this year, where I started to write really lengthy newsletter type things on Substack. So yeah, if people want to sign up to that, you can also get a free wellbeing booklet from me for that as well. And there's also, I've got a like a workbook so there was a nervous system workshop that I did a while ago, and I created a workbook to go with it, and that's for sale on Amazon as well. There's a link on
Oh,
my website for that.
what's the name of that on Amazon?
It's gosh, now you're asking.
Oh, sorry.
You'd think I'd know, seeing as I've written it.
Well, we'll figure that out in just a bit.
I think it's how to heal your nervous system, something along those lines. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically it's kind of to go along with a workshop that I did. But yeah, there's a workbook for it as well. So that's available on my website as well. The links are all on my website anyway.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, so there's some free videos on there of stuff that I've done, yoga classes that I've done. I've done some for Different Strokes charity, which is in the UK. So there's quite a few decent free resources on there for people to have a browse through.
Well, you're mentioning free resources. Is there an upgrade level for your coaching that's a cost or?
So yeah, so my costs, so the coaching, so I've got two types of programs. So I've got my yoga program, which is the Life After Stroke program. And that's £340. It's a 6-week program, pre-recorded sessions, and you get a session with me once a week as well, for like coaching kind of call, to go through like what that week's focus is. And then I've got my one-to-one coaching, which is kind of like coaching movement, breath work, meditation. That is kind of a mixture of all the modalities that I use, which is, it's based over, well, it's we have 8 sessions based like every other week. So it's like 16 weeks or so for that. And that's £640 at the moment. So yeah, there's paid stuff, there's free stuff. So whichever suits people. And then, you know, with my newsletters, that goes out free every week to people with lots of great tips.
And like I said, those sometimes it's like, oh my God, I needed to hear that today. You know, it's so funny how
I'm so pleased. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, is that, you know, sometimes people just need to take a moment out and be like, oh yeah, I needed that. Yeah.
It's you see it and it's like, oh shit, do I need to read? And I read it and it's like, oh my God, perfect timing. So yeah. Is there a contact page on your website? So
yes, there's my details are on there as well with yeah, so you can either write me a message, or you can just email me directly. But either way, I get them. And you can also contact me through Instagram or Facebook as well. I'm on there as well. So
great. Yeah. Well, thank you, Anna. I really appreciate your time. And as always, you're a pleasure to deal with.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. You take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.